A gunman has killed 6 people at Perm University in the Russian Urals. Police wounded and detained the attacker, who's reported to be a student. The Kremlin has insisted that Russia's parliamentary elections were open, honest and competitive, rejecting allegations of massive rigging. United Russia, the party that supports President Putin, picked up 2/3 of the seats in the lower house of parliament. A court in Rwanda has found the former hotel manager, who's credited with saving hundreds of people during the 1994 genocide, guilty of terror-related crimes. Paul Rusesabagina is expected to receive a lengthy prison sentence. And a volcano has erupted on the Spanish Canary island of La Palma, forcing the evacuation of some villages. And they're all your latest headlines here on BBC World News.
The latest on the situation at the border. The Biden administration has started to deport thousands of migrants who have been gathering in recent weeks at the border town of Del Rio. Our Kenneth Moden is there for us with the very latest. Kenneth, good morning.
Good morning, TJ. This part of the border behind me closed as officials work to process those migrants and send many of them back home. Meanwhile, thousands of families and others seeking asylum are still under that nearby bridge, waiting for the U.S. to tell them what's next. This morning, the first images of that massive deportation effort underway, captured by our ABC affiliate WPLG. Flights of migrants from Del Rio, Texas, returning to Haiti. Approximately 13,000 people, many from Haiti, the country ravaged and unstable after the assassination of its president and a deadly earthquake in August. Others from South America seeking refuge underneath the Del Rio International Bridge on the Texas border.
We've never seen anything like this. This is completely and totally out of the norm of anything that we've ever seen.
This was the main point of entry for those migrants. Border Patrol officials say thousands of them, many with children, taking this narrow and treacherous path across the Rio Grande. An unprecedented federal and state response. 1,000 Texas state troopers backing up 600 members of Customs and Border Patrol. Inside this sea of humanity, officials say incidents of violence. Migrants bathing in the river, crossing back and forth for food. Makeshift shelters built to protect from the 100-degree heat. Then there's the COVID concern.
We are providing food, water, portable toilets, towels. Emergency medical technicians are available for first aid.
The small border community overwhelmed.
We're a very welcoming and loving community, but we can only provide so much.
Border Patrol expects to process those remaining migrants by the end of the week, a huge undertaking as federal authorities look into this mass migration and how those Haitians got here, by boat, by bus, by foot. Officials say this illegal crossing is well known, but they repeat that this is something they've never seen before.
Pfizer and BioNTech said their COVID-19 vaccine was found to be safe in children ages 5 to 11 and generated a strong immune response, though they haven't yet determined how well it protects against COVID. The companies plan to seek emergency authorization in the U.S. as early as the end of the month. CVS, the largest pharmacy chain by stores in the U.S., says it plans to hire 25,000 employees this week as demand for COVID-19 tests and flu shots surges. The company's been dealing with staffing shortages that have prompted stores to close drive-through lanes and at times turn away customers looking for shots. And new rules for travelers flying to the U.S. The Biden administration is relaxing a series of COVID-19 travel bans imposed during the Trump administration. Now, foreign nationals will be required to show proof of vaccination and a negative COVID-19 test taken within 3 days of departure to the U.S. The new policy will go into effect in early November.
We start with the coronavirus situation here in Japan, where the number of new cases continues to decline. More than 2,200 new infections were reported across the nation on Monday, for the first daily tally below 3,000 since July. The Tokyo Metropolitan Government says it confirmed just over 300 new cases in the capital. The figure was below 1,000 for the 5th straight day. The declines come as over 53% of the country's population have received their second vaccine shot. Young people have also started to get inoculated. Tokyo's Adachi Ward on Monday began offering vaccines to residents aged from 16 to their 30s.
I was afraid of infecting my grandmother when I go back home. I feel relieved to be vaccinated.
Nearly 1,500 cases across Japan are listed as serious. 19 of the nation's 47 prefectures are under a state of emergency until the end of this month. North Korea has dismissed South Korea's recent announcement it successfully test-fired a submarine-launched ballistic missile. The state-run Korean Central News Agency carried a comment on Monday by the chief of North Korea's Academy of National Defense Science. Jang Chang-ha said the weapon was clearly not an SLBM as it was fired from a shallow depth and had the structure and form of a surface-to-surface tactical ballistic missile. He said the missile was nothing more than a rudimentary toddling stage weapon and it could not be considered a threat. But Jang concluded the South's efforts to improve submarine weapons systems is an indication of the level of military tension on the Korean peninsula. He said that awakens us again and makes us sure of what we ought to do. The presidents of the United States and France are set to speak over the phone in the coming days. It'll be their first talk since a diplomatic row erupted over Australia's decision to cancel its submarine deal with France. Australia decided to scrap its plan to develop submarines with France and instead opted for US and UK technological support to acquire its first nuclear-powered submarines. The United States and United Kingdom will provide the assistance to Australia under their new security partnership called AUKUS. The three nations unveiled the framework last week, apparently aimed at keeping China in check. France has recalled its ambassadors to the U.S. and Australia in protest after the termination of the multi-billion-dollar deal. Attention is focused on whether U.S. President Joe Biden and his French counterpart, Emmanuel Macron, will be able to stop the situation from deteriorating further and restore a degree of trust. Now, Southeast Asian nations are voicing concern the new security framework may raise tensions. Malaysia's Prime Minister told his Australian counterpart on Friday, AUKUS could potentially provoke other powers to act more aggressively, especially within the South China Sea region. Indonesia's foreign ministry issued a statement saying the country is deeply concerned over the area's continuing arms race and power projection. The Philippines defense secretary stressed his nation's stance of neutrality on the security arrangement. He said Manila wants to maintain good bilateral defense relations with all countries in the region. AUKUS is likely to be discussed at an ASEAN summit scheduled for late October. Now, the moves drew strong criticism from North Korea. A foreign ministry statement says the program threatens regional peace and stability, as well as the international nuclear non-proliferation system. The statement adds its natural neighboring countries, including China, condemn these actions as irresponsible. It also vows corresponding counteraction by Pyongyang if the United States has even a small adverse impact on North Korea's security. People in the Philippines continue to struggle with one of the worst coronavirus outbreaks in Southeast Asia. They're also watching their livelihoods crumble amid an economic slump. As NHK World's Yamaguchi Masashi reports, putting food on the table for many now means turning to a community-based movement that's spreading the importance of sharing and bringing people together.
On the side of this road in central Manila stands a small tent. Renarin Lala lives here with her husband and two daughters. The couple used to earn nearly twice the Manila average, but both lost their jobs last year. Now they struggle to feed their family.
We're devastated. We have no choice but to live like this, exposed to the wind and rain, collecting garbage to make a living.
A strict curfew that's been in place for over a year has led to the Philippines' worst ever recession. With unemployment surging, the number of households that cannot afford enough to eat has hit 4.2 million. That's twice as many as before the pandemic. Now, a growing nationwide movement known as the Community Pantry is providing a lifeline for many.
A lot of family is starving, so we just want to help them. this is our own little way of helping them.
Some of the food being shared comes from stores that would otherwise have to throw it away at the end of the day. Mark Florendo runs a non-profit that collects it from partner grocery shops for delivery directly to people in need.
I just thought it was a very simple idea of using their bicycles to do so much for the environment, for the people.
Florendo is now focusing on increasing the number of partner stores. He visits the warehouse of a food delivery farm that's thriving during the pandemic.
So it's very hard for us to throw some. Sir Mark is very helping us.
Inspired by Food Rescue, 15 charities now receive food from supermarkets and other donors for distribution to people who otherwise couldn't afford it, many of them living in slums.
For Food Rescue, again, I want it to be a lifestyle for everyone. I want it to be really part of Filipino culture and hopefully everyone's culture of not wasting food.
Despite these immensely challenging times, sharing is helping people in the Philippines pull together to get through the nation's worst ever economic downturn and put food on the table. Yamaguchi Masashi, NHK World, Manila.
Next, a volcano on one of Spain's Canary Islands in the Atlantic Ocean has erupted for the first time in 50 years. Residents are being urged to evacuate. Reuters news agency and other media say the Cumbre Vieja volcano on the southern part of La Palma Island started erupting on Sunday. People living near the volcano had already evacuated in response to volcanic tremors that occurred before the eruption. But authorities are now urging people living in areas farther away to flee as lava has been spewing from several fissures. The Canary Islands Volcanology Institute posted detailed information on its Twitter account. It's calling on people not to approach the eruption sites. And those were the headlines we're following.